My name is Taylor. This is Hack&Company at RE/MAX River City. Welcome to Real Estate Remarks, where we answer your questions because there's a lot to know when it comes to real estate, and there's some questions that are very timely, like this one. Is this a real estate bubble, and if so, what's going to happen next? I wish my crystal ball was super clear, because then I could be able to tell you exactly what to do at this moment and exactly when it would pay off, but I probably wouldn't be telling you if I knew that information, because many people that can predict the future are probably super valuable and maybe keep to themselves and just keep their own lottery numbers. Honestly, predicting the future is gambling. And when it comes down to real estate bubbles, we can learn from history. Like, we can take a look at what happened as property rose to a climax in Q2 of 2007 for what we call the boom. And then say, okay, well, there was a U.S. financial crisis that we couldn't see from here. There was lenders taking really high risks, and it made money less available, which decreased demand, and all of a sudden property went down in 2008, went down in 2009. It seemed to like level out through plateau in 10 and 11, and then start to pick up, and all of a sudden 13 and 14 were doing really well, but oil was also over $140 a barrel. And that's what led us to the high watermark near the end of 2014. From there, we got announcements on oil prices dropping. We saw job loss. We saw companies close down, and we had hardship that led to home equity dropping in 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19. And we were really wondering because, honestly, when's it going to turn? Like, at some point, it just kind of has to, doesn't it? Statistically, we haven't seen a 7-year period in Canada really where property lost value and didn't recover. But now we're getting really close, and all of a sudden the world changes in 2020. But the way that it changed meant that some things weren't available anymore. Entertainment's hard to find, travel's really limited. And where our focus is right now is in our houses, because that's the only place that we're allowed. Families bought their houses to live out of them. They wanted to go to the places around them. Location was really important to the majority of families to control commutes. But with work from home, with school from home, with not being allowed out, with lockdowns, these things have all changed, and some of them are going to go back. Some of them are not. Work from home has opened the barn door in a way that they may never get the horses back. Honestly, employees have wanted work from home for a long period of time because the commute is a waste of time in many cases. And if the culture in the company isn't dynamic, if being person to person isn't anything more than accountability, it's going to be really tough to argue against that value of limiting the commute time. And there's so many companies that are looking for dynamic ways to make what we call an employee value proposition that we may see even more positions being offered in work from home, and they may solve companies their problems in interesting ways. For example, imagine a company in Vancouver. They've got to hire somebody that lives relatively close enough to drive there, and all the property within that range in downtown Vancouver may be somewhere between 10 and 17 times the average household income to buy the average property. Where here in Edmonton, it's only 4 times the average household income to buy the average property. That could lead to a company in Vancouver hiring somebody in Edmonton for the same position, because if they work from home, what's the difference? So we're going to see some really interesting sweeps and changes, and that's why I'm kind of speculating at what the bubble will look like. Because I think a lot of people are just taking a look at maybe some correlative data and saying, hey, because this is a specific instance that real estate is rising where other things aren't necessarily rising, it's obviously not like the others, so there's going to have to be a correction. But they've been saying that there needs to be a correction in places like Toronto and Vancouver that have been going up percentage points each month in property value for years without any correction. Meanwhile, Edmonton has been getting more affordable and more affordable and more affordable. So now, in a situation where rising tides lift all ships, is it possible that we might actually be a contrasting great option? That company in Vancouver could hire somebody here, right? And somebody here could live in a major center that gives them a lot of amenities at a lower cost than they could live in some of those competing markets. Could it be by the end of 2021 that Edmonton's talking about both affordable housing and jobs? If that was the case, in 2022, we would expect more people to move here than are leaving. And that wasn't the case in many of the years that we saw oil dropping. We saw people leaving here, which meant that there was going to be less demand for shelter, whether you're renting it out or trying to sell it. In the condo market, they were the most challenged. There was one buyer for every 3 sellers in many cases. And in the general market, there was only one buyer for every 2 sellers. And that meant that the sellers that needed to go needed to outcompete the other ones by offering buyers better options and lower prices. So we saw property decrease in value. However, through 2021, we're starting to see that the reason that families chose to buy the last house that they bought have changed. They're not worried about commute times. Getting a smaller house is a bad option because people have to work from home and school from home. More rooms is more important. So they're moving out to the places in the suburbs and acreages where they can get larger properties at lower cost or even upgrade, because look at the available money they have for a year of no travel and no entertainment if their income didn't get disrupted. So we saw single-family detached houses raise in value significantly to the point where somebody shopping at the average price in Edmonton, around that 400 range, may not be able to shop at their pre-approval limit anymore. It could be that the $400,000 properties are going to be selling at 410, 415, 425 in the multiple offer scenarios that we've been seeing, and they might need to shop in that 375 to 385 range, which is what we've been noticing. Single-family properties got really attractive, and now duplexes are more attractive because they're affordable to some of the groups that were hoping to get a house. And since then, we've started to see townhouses lift. It could be that we see apartment-style condos start to get some action next, and that would be some really exciting news when you take a look at how Edmonton's been over the last 5 years. So what's next? What about this bubble? When's it going to change? Well, honestly, in order to be a bubble, it's got to rise, and right now we're just seeing the beginning of a rise. So I think that the families that are getting unlocked in equity, that are looking to make these changes for lifestyle, we hear you. Not everything is a dollar value decision to people that say the most important thing to them is delivering 18 summers to their kids. So those families are starting to move as they get unlocked. It could be that they wanted to move, but they bought in 2015. And even though a family like them would have moved every 5 years, without the equity gain to make the down payment for the next property, they weren't able to go. So now, as the market lifts a little bit, they're going to get unlocked. The people from 2016, maybe the market lifts another percent, they're going to get unlocked from 2017. It's going to be interesting because that demand sequence, because we're talking to homeowners all the time. We know many, many people that wanted to move over the last few years, and it didn't make a lot of sense. And because we don't force anybody, we just start relationships and provide information so they can make good decisions. We're still in contact with those folks, and we're starting to see the numbers head in their direction. So when you're taking a look at Edmonton right now, when you're taking a look at is the bubble going to burst, I think that right now, if there is going to be a bubble, you should enjoy it because we haven't had some lift in a while. This could mean that families get to get what they want for a little bit, and it could end up being perpetuating mostly because our market's been moving down, and the markets that we're watching and that we're talking about in the news are markets that have been rising percentage points per month in cases like Vancouver and Toronto for years. My name is Taylor. This is Hack&Company at RE/MAX River City, and that's my perspective on is this a bubble, and if so, when is it going to burst? And if you have a better crystal ball, I'd love to see it. I hope you guys are doing awesome. Cheers.